want, what you want.
Alright, so if you're new to this whole paper mache thing, let's go over some of the basic tools that you'll need in order to take this hobby on. It's really, this can be as expensive as you want it to be as far as tools go for doing this type of thing, or it can be as cheap as you want to go. It just depends on how far you really get into it and the different projects you're doing. But really the basic tools that you'll need to accomplish most any paper mache project. One of the simplest tools is a bowl. You'll need bowls to mix paste in, to hold paste in. You'll need bowls to mix paper clay with, put those things together. Bowls to have water in. They're just handy to have. So a good cheap plastic bowl, an assortment of bowls is always a good thing to have to do paper mache with. As well, either a good X-Acto knife is good to have on hand, or a carpenter's knife is also a tool that I use constantly all the time. If you get into doing paper clay and playing around with that and getting details, a good little sculpting tool kit like this is very, very handy to have as well. I think I bought these at Michael's for, it was one kit, and I think it was, I don't know, 10 bucks, 10 or 12 bucks. Wasn't too bad. I do recommend you clean your tools more than I do. That way they don't get all gunked up. But sculpting tools, you'll want a good spoon. This is one of the tools that I find myself using the most. It's kind of funny. It's just something you find in your kitchen, but I use this more than almost any other tool that I have when it comes to clay and smoothing clay and things of that nature. And the thing about the spoon is you'll want a smooth back spoon like this. You don't want any kind of design or any embossing on this. You want a good smooth spoon here. That way when you go and you're spreading clay, you can spread it out and leave a nice smooth layer on the top of that clay. Assorted paintbrushes. They're a must as well. Of course, because you're going to paint all of your projects when you're done with them. So you'll want a vast variety of paintbrushes to use. You know, if you're really detailed in your painting, you might want to buy some nicer, more expensive brushes. A lot of times you can get away with cheaper ones. And paintbrushes you can use in two ways. Not only can you use it for painting your project when you're done, but you can also use paintbrush dipped in paper mache paste to spread and smooth clay as well. So if you're working with paper mache clay, you can use it to help sculpt with. You can use it to help smooth things out with. So you'll use them in a variety of fashions other than just paint itself. And then you can use the backsides of the paintbrushes to put indentions in as well. When it comes to working with clay though in your tools, what I have found over time that you really want to use something that's metal. I don't know what it is, but the metal surface smooths the clay out better and works better. If you use different cheaper plastic, they got plastic sculpting tools and things like that, plastic grips the clay different and it doesn't smooth as well. I've used a few of them. I don't like them. So any tools that I'm going to use, I'm going to work in with clay, whether I'm going to, dig in detail or whatever. I make sure the tools I'm using are metal. You're also going to need an assortment of cheap measuring cups for measuring out your glue for your paste or joint compound for your paper mache clay, whatever. These are always handy to have on hand. You're going to want a pencil or marker. That way, if you're doing a project like a pumpkin, you can sketch the face onto it and then work around the face you've drawn on. Hot glue gun, it always seems like this is a must-have, especially when you're building armatures. This is great, so make sure you have one of those. And then tape, masking tape. I use lots and lots of masking tape. So you want masking tape in different sizes from 2" to inch, whatever. You'll find that masking tape is your friend, especially in the beginning processes when you're building your armatures for your different projects. Lots and lots of masking tape. You can never have too much of this. And then also you'll want a blender of some type. Blenders are great for when you're making your paper clay. To blend everything together. You can also use it to stir your paste with. It goes faster than just doing it by hand. But I recommend getting a blender that you're not going to use for food later on, because you will get the blender nasty. It's hard to get cleaned back off. So I just recommend going out and buying another one for your paper mache projects. However, the one thing I will warn you on blenders, and I hear people advise this all the time, and I highly recommend against it. Everybody tells you to go out and buy a cheap blender. So you can go to Walmart and you can buy not a blender, but a mixer. You go to Walmart and you can buy some of these things for $5 or $6. When you're making a batch of clay, you'll usually wipe out a cheap one within 2 batches of clay. The motors are not strong and they're very easy to burn up. You got to be very careful with it when you're mixing your batches of clay. Now, I couldn't tell you how many cheap mixers I've gone through. So, for me, and in my experience, you're better off going out and buying a higher quality mixer or beater, because it will last you a lot longer. The motors in them are stronger and they can handle more torque bearing onto them, and they just don't burn out as fast. So, really, in my opinion, you stay away from the cheap ones because you're going to burn them up. I've burned up a lot of them, so stay away from the cheap ones. Go buy a quality one, especially if this is something you get into and you really enjoy. Okay, so that's pretty much the basic tools that you need for doing any project. And there are other tools I'm going to recommend too that you have on hand that will really help you out. One of them is a Dremel tool of some type. If you have a Dremel tool you can get them from Harbor Freight pretty cheap. You can buy a Dremel brand like this at Lowe's or anywhere else. I've burned up a few of the cheaper ones, so I wound up buying a Dremel brand Dremel tool. These things come in extremely handy when you're cutting out like a face to a pumpkin, or even if you let your clay dry, you can go back in with the Dremel and different bits and you can carve detail back into that clay if you forgot to add or you think you need a little more detail after it dries. So I would keep one of those on hand as well. Also, it's always good to have a pair of pliers, be it needle nose pliers or standard pliers, and a pair of side cutters as well. That way, if you're using any wire in your armature, you've got pliers that you can make your bends with. You can cut the wire off if you got too much excess on what you're doing. They're good to have on hand. One other tool that I would like to note that's really good to have in your arsenal for doing this stuff, and I love it. This is a cheaper one. It doesn't ratchet, it just squeeze. Well, it does ratchet somewhat. This is a PVC cutter. You'll see in a lot of the tutorials that I do where I use PVC or CPVC or even electrical conduit. I use it as a part of the armature underneath what I'm doing. These are great to have because you just stick the PVC in it, clamp it down until it cuts, and you cut it off. It really beats taking a little saw and sawing through the PVC. And you can cut much quicker with something like this. So this is also a good tool to have in your arsenal of tools when you're doing paper mache projects. But really the basic tools you're going to need, like I said, are the bowl, tape, hot glue gun, some type of knife, and paintbrushes, and sculpting tools, and a spoon. The tools I find myself I use the most, really, I use my hands a whole lot. I use the spoon a lot. I use these sculpting tools a lot, and of course a knife. and then of course paint brushes later on for painting. So really, this is the basics of what you need. You can start off a new project without this stuff. The sculpting tools are just to add finer detail later on in clay work if you get into clay work. But you can start any project with just your hands and paper and your paste. It's really all you need. But if you have an assortment of something like this, you can pretty much hit yourself through almost any project that you throw at yourself, or generally any project that you see that I'm doing on the website. If you have this array of tools, you'll be able to get the project completed and do what you need to do. Alright, go make something!